If you've had enough of credit card videos, today's topic is going to be much more inspiring. Hey guys, how's it going? This is Daniel, TheLandMiler, and today we're going to be exploring Aeroplan's flight redemption award charts. We'll be diving into how the Aeroplan redemption system works, what you should watch out for, as well as a few sweet spot redemptions that you want to look out for in your future travels. If you're new to the channel, I talk about credit cards, how to fly the world in first and business class, so if that's something that's interesting to you, definitely consider subscribing to the channel and turning on that notification button. For those who are already familiar with the Aeroplan program, this video is more of an introductory for beginners who want to learn about the redemption side of travel points. On the other hand, if you don't have any Aeroplan points as of right now, I do also have some other videos for previous discussion and some best offers. As of November of last year, when Air Canada completed their reacquisition of the Aeroplan program, the award chart changed from just a zone-based redemption system to a zone and distance-based redemption. This means that the amount of points required really depends on which zone of the world you're flying to, as well as the distance between your departure and your arrival destinations. As a result, the Aeroplan award regions are divided up into 4 different regions. We have North America, South America, Pacific, and Atlantic regions. Each region will also have several different award charts depending on where you're departing from. So there's a separate chart for if you're flying within North America, if you want to do North America to the Pacific or Atlantic region, within the Pacific, within the Atlantic, etc., etc. All of these charts are on the Air Canada website, and I will have a direct link to it in the description below. The amount of Aeroplan points required also depends on whether or not you're flying on an Air Canada airplane or if you're flying on one of Air Canada's partners. One of the changes on the new program was that Air Canada had promised that every single seat on every single Air Canada aircraft would now be bookable on Aeroplan points. But as a result, the points requirement on Air Canada metal flights are now dynamic and depend widely based on the current market price of that exact same fare. For Aeroplan credit card holders and elite status members, you will also be able to qualify for a discount on Air Canada flights. Thankfully, flights on partnered airlines are still at a fixed cost, but the availability does depend on how many seats that partner airline releases to Air Canada. On top of that, if you are flying on an itinerary that has both Air Canada and a partnered airline, you may be subject to a mixed cost, which may or may not work out in your favor. This really depends on how long in your itinerary are you flying an Air Canada flight. Since it's probably better to illustrate this by example, let's take a look at the North American award chart and see how it pans out when we take a look at the prices on the Air Canada website. Now, the award chart we're looking at here applies only to flights within North America, so something like a Toronto to New York or Toronto to Vancouver would be calculated using this chart. We can see immediately on the very left there are different thresholds for different distances in miles. As an example, a direct flight from Toronto to Vancouver is around 2,085 miles, which would fall into the third row. Applications like Great Circle Mapper are a great tool for you to get an idea of how many miles are in between two destinations. You'll also notice that there are different amounts for Air Canada and partnered flights, as we had just discussed. For Air Canada, there's a band of different values due to that variable pricing that was introduced back in November. If you search for some last-minute flights on the Air Canada website on miles, you'll soon find out that these bands mean absolutely nothing. I've seen flights go for much less and much more than what those bands have suggested, so definitely use them solely as a guideline. We'll use the same Toronto to Vancouver example, and since we're flying on Air Canada on a direct flight totaling 2,085 miles, you should see the cost being around 12.5k to 17.5k for a one-way economy flight, or 25 to 60k for a one-way in business class. On the award chart, they do state that these ranges are for informational purposes only, so let's take a look at how good sometimes and how ridiculous sometimes these prices can range. We'll start with something reasonable with a booking that's several months from now. Without logging in, I searched the route for November 9th. With the 12.5 in economy and 25k in business class guideline, we see here that the economy class ticket is actually at a 25% discount at 9,000 points only, whereas the business class ticket is right at 25k. Now, remember what I said about the credit card and elite status discounts? Just by logging in, I see further discounted, with the economy class ticket only costing 7,500 points and the business class ticket costing 23,100, which makes this an even better deal. Now let's look at something that's super close to flying date. Some of these prices are not even close to the pricing band, even with the credit card and status discounts factored in. My advice for your future booking is to aim for a price that's near the bottom of the pricing band. This may not work some of the time based on the market's flight prices, but we want to make sure we're redeeming Aeroplan points at a relatively reasonable rate. Blowing 50,000 points on a one-way economy class flight to Vancouver doesn't really make any sense unless it's for an emergency. Just to recap, let's take a look at all the different factors that affect a basic Aeroplan redemption. Factor number 1, your departure and arrival regions. Number 2, the distance in miles on your flights from said departure and arrival cities. This would include all layovers in between. Factor number 3, which class you're flying in, whether it's economy, premium economy, business, or first class. Factor number 4, whether you're flying on Air Canada or a partnered airline. Partners have a fixed pricing system, and Air Canada flights will have a variable one. Factor number 5, for Air Canada flights, having an Aeroplan credit card and having Air Canada Elite status will qualify for additional discounts. And factor number 6, this one is a bit tricky, but for journeys that involve both Air Canada and partnered airlines, you may be subject to a mixed cost. With that in mind, let's move on to a more interesting redemption, ANA's first class from Toronto to Tokyo, Japan. Here we have 3 different results when we look for a first class redemption using our Aeroplan points. Since Tokyo is in the Pacific region, we turn to the North America to Pacific region for points reference. Since our itinerary stops through Chicago, we'll have to count both the mileage from Toronto to Chicago as well as Chicago to Tokyo. On Great Circle Mapper, we find that the distance between Toronto and Chicago is 436 miles. Subsequently, Chicago to Narita Airport is 6274 miles and Haneda is 6305 miles. Putting these two together would land us at around 6,700 miles, which comfortably fits in the second row of the award chart. And just as we figured, the award pricing that we see for economy class is 50,000 points, business is 75,000, and first class is 110 for a one-way journey. What's interesting here is that one of the options actually does include an Air Canada flight. We figured that the pricing doesn't change into a variable one just because of how short a duration the Toronto to Chicago leg is on Air Canada compared to the long leg on ANA. You'll also notice that I am logged into my Air Canada account, and the discounts that I got on Air Canada flights will not apply to a partner award like this. Furthermore, if you're someone who's looking at visiting multiple countries on the same trip, then that's when Aeroplan's stopover policy comes into play. Ever since the changes to the new Aeroplan program, if you're booking an award that's not an only North American redemption, you can get an additional stopover for an additional 5,000 points. This rule even applies on one-way trips, so if you're looking at booking a full round trip, you can have a total of 2 different stopovers. For me, I don't tend to like booking overly complicated trips, so what I do is I book 2 separate one-way flights, cross-Atlantic or Pacific, and for each one I would include a single stopover. This way I can hit 3 different countries without overcomplicating the booking process. Similar to our previous example with ANA First Class, you'll have to look at each leg of your itinerary and add all of those distances up and add an additional 5,000 points for the stopover. There are instances though where you will have to pay a bit more than 5,000. Say for example, the extra leg on your itinerary bumps you up to the next mileage bucket. Because of that, you'll have to pay the additional mileage fee plus the additional 5,000. For these kinds of bookings, you will have to contact Air Canada directly in order for them to secure you a multi-destination trip. Currently, the online system will add up each of your different legs and add all of the costs together. So make sure you aren't booking online if you're doing a multi-destination trip. Which brings us to a few sweet spots that you might want to consider if you want to maximize your miles. Sweet spot number 1, Vancouver to Tokyo on ANA's business class for 55,000 miles. I think probably the greatest sweet spot of them all as of right now is the Vancouver to Tokyo route on ANA's business class for 55,000 miles one way or 110,000 miles round trip. If you compare this to flying out of Toronto or Montreal to Tokyo, that would cost round trip a total of 150,000 points or more. A flight of this caliber usually goes for around $4,000 to $5,000, so you're getting at least 4 to 5 cents per point in value. Sweet spot number 2, Toronto to Calgary or Vancouver. While the overall North American redemptions seem to have weakened because of this new distance-based chart, the Toronto to Vancouver and Calgary legs are still at $12,500 for economy and $25,000 for business class. Most of these routes also feature Air Canada 787 or 777 aircrafts, so you can get a full-fledged lay-flat seat for several hours. On top of that, because it is an Air Canada flight, if you are holding an Aeroplan credit card or if you have elite status, you might be able to pick up the flight for even less than that. Sweet spot number 3, Vancouver to Hawaii. The same North American award chart helps us book our third sweet spot, which is Vancouver to Hawaii. Because the route falls just under 2,750 miles, you can book a flight from Vancouver to Honolulu for only 12,500 points in economy and 25,000 in business, similar to the Toronto to Calgary and Vancouver routes. And while you may not get the same price each time based on that dynamic pricing by Air Canada, what you should be doing is taking a look into the future. If you have a flight planned for Honolulu or Maui, making sure you get that booked in before you get too close to the flying date. Last but not least, we have our fourth sweet spot, practically every single short haul flight. As you probably may have guessed with the new distance-based award chart that shorter flights means less miles used. Flights like Tokyo to Seoul, South Korea or Hong Kong now cost a fraction of what they used to based on this new distance-based ruling. If you need to hop to a new country during a long trip, for example, you might be able to make use of some spare Aeroplan points. The same can be said for short-haul flights in Canada, like a Vancouver to Calgary or Toronto to Montreal. The only reason why I might not use Aeroplan to do this is because British Airways Avios does the same thing but with oneworld partners. Both Air Canada and British Airways are now pretty generous on their short-haul offers, but because the British Airways award chart is more punishing for long-haul, it might be better off keeping your Aeroplan points for that Trans-Pacific or Atlantic journey. Hopefully with this, you'll have a better time navigating the Aeroplan award chart and both their fixed and dynamic flight pricing. While the dynamic system may sometimes not work out in your favor, there are still a ton of ways to ensure you're getting a bunch of value, whether you're flying economy or in first class. Again, as always, if you like the topic that we've covered today, definitely give this video a quick thumbs up, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications for even more travel hacking content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.